you've done a ton of work on trauma. You've mentioned that word maybe a couple of times already. I live in Austin, Texas. Austin, Texas is the sort of place where when I walk into a sauna, someone is talking about their trauma work that they've just done at an MDMA and ketamine therapy assisted sound bath in South America. And it's got me a little turned off from the word. I understand that trauma is a big deal. I've had guys on that run psychedelic assisted therapy for PTSD for veterans. But what is bollocks and what is not bollocks in the world of trauma? Where are people getting out over their skis? Where is it truthful?
Well, here's the thing. There's trauma and then there's stress. Stress is situational. Yeah, it happens. You have a response to the stress, to what's going on, and you're stressed about it. How you know something is trauma is their response is disproportionate to the scenario. That suggests that there is a pre-existing wound. Something's happened before you came along that's made them hypersensitive about the situation, and their response is disproportionate. So whenever somebody's response is disproportionate to the scenario, there's potentially a wound. Now, I am personally of the opinion that for me personally, all the holistic kind of things don't necessarily work on me. I wouldn't really go do ayahuasca, and I wouldn't really be able to just do a bunch of affirmations. For me personally, that doesn't work. From my experience and personally, and I would love to hear what you think as well. For me, the only way to outdo trauma is to make better decisions in life. Your trauma is kind of going to be always leading you to self-destructive paths. It's always going to lead you towards self-sabotage. Your trauma is going to teach you to live for today and not worry about tomorrow. It's going to tell you to spend the money in the casino. It's going to tell you to pay for that escort. It's going to tell you to just indulge. But when you stop and you start valuing yourself and making good, effective decisions, you're going to beat that trauma. That trauma is like a devil inside of you telling you to almost kill yourself through vices. But when you stop and you take control and you say, I am going to make good decisions, I'm going to take self-control, you defeat the trauma. All the other types of therapies, for me personally, I really don't like to knock anything because everybody's different. It doesn't work for me sitting in the mirror telling myself I'm amazing. It doesn't work. I can sit there and say, you're gorgeous, you're beautiful. I'm never going to believe that. But if I say, get to the gym, don't eat carbs for today, don't eat sugars after this time, I don't care what my trauma is telling me. I'll start to feel more beautiful. But telling myself affirmations, it doesn't work on me. What about for you? What works well for you?
So I don't know with regards to the trauma thing, but certainly in terms of what makes me feel better, I have to change my mind with the body. So if I don't train, if I don't get sunlight, if I don't move, if I get cold and hot within a day, I feel phenomenal. I went to a sauna and cold plunge place that I love here in Austin called Kuya, and took a bunch of friends from the UK there yesterday, and we did maybe 2 rounds of heat and cold. And you get out of the cold tub after wanting your life to end for quite a while. And one of the guys said, dude, I challenge anybody that's having a bad day to do that and not feel amazing after you've finished. So for me, changing the mind with the body is a good place to start. Trying to think your way out of overthinking is like trying to sniff your way out of a cocaine addiction. It's just not, it's not going
it's not going to work.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to find the solution there. And there's lots of research to suggest that as well. People think they get an anxious thought, they start thinking their way out of it, and now they're trapped with their thoughts and traumas. The reality is, most research shows that it's actually in your body. The anxiety exists in your body. So by changing your bodily state rather than your mental state will actually help. So like you said, the plunges so you take like cold baths and stuff like that. Would that work? And it
Absolutely.
works?
Yeah, it does.
Incredible.
For me. Well, it's the most reliable way to increase dopamine and then to keep it at a relatively good level before it tapers off. So most of the time, there's sort of this dopaminergic seesaw. So you will get some, but on the other side, you're going to pay for it. Kind of like going out and drinking, and then you have a hangover. That's kind of how the dopaminergic system works. But cold exposure is one of the few things that allows you to get that increase, and then it'll slowly taper back down to baseline without you having to pay this overdraft in a way. So it's a very reliable way to improve dopamine. So going back to the trauma thing, what are some of the common trauma patterns that show up in people's behavior, or there's a mindset that many people may hold? Is there a common relationship between something that somebody believes and a common trauma that has gone through in their past?
Yeah, and I think one of the things people always believe they're far more unique than they are, especially in relationships. They always say to me, they get to a session, they're like, "Oh, you're never going to hear anybody like this. I have to tell you this." And I ask two questions, and I can tell them they predict their exact behavior. And what trauma basically is, it's not necessarily that you're abused or you're attacked or anything like that. Essentially, you had needs that were not met as a child in some way, shape, or form. And children, we're not designed to detach from our parents because we can't survive by being detached from our parents. So we won't ever stop loving our parents who don't meet our needs, but we do stop loving ourselves. We stop investing in ourselves because we're thinking that we're not worthy of investment, and it's all unconscious. So what happens in relationships is they go into the relationships with the preparation that this person's going to hurt me. So I have two choices. I either cling on to them for dear life and hold on to them, and I can almost live in their skin and monitor their behavior and try and control everything they do and become preoccupied with them and watch when they're last online and just think about them all day, every day, just so they don't leave me. But in that desperate attempt to kind of keep them, we end up suffocating them and fighting with them to keep them, and the relationship ends. Or you can go down the other route, which is to become completely independent, completely avoidant, dismiss, emotionally detached, emotionally guarded, and almost have a partner there, but act as if they don't exist. Have a separate room, don't invest too much, maybe have alternative partners here and there, and have the avoidant route, which I'm sure you've come across before. So we either go extreme anxiety or extreme dismissal and avoidance. And that is really the two trauma responses when it comes to relationships.
When you're looking at trying to fix somebody's attachment, what are the places that you start at?
The first thing I always ask them to remember is your anxiety or your defense mechanism is not symbolic of love. What happens is people seem to think if they're preoccupied with someone and they're thinking about them all day, every day, and they're trying to control their behavior and they're watching them, I must be in love. I can't stop thinking about this person. I know he's toxic. I know you're not good for me, but I can't stop thinking. I'm watching when he's online. They mistake that preoccupation as love. They think I must be in love with that person when really it's a signal. It's a signal to show that your trauma alarm has been activated. This person is not soothing you, or you are finding the problems in this relationship. But either way, it's not a symbol of love. It's a symbol that something's wrong. It's a signal that you haven't been able to soothe yourself, or this relationship is not soothing. So we have to dissect which one it is. Is it the person, or is it your own anxieties? So we start with their response. Or it could be a man that says, she's really great. I love her. She's done nothing wrong. She's perfect, but I don't really care about her. I don't really like her. I don't know. I need space. I feel suffocated. But when she leaves, I really miss her and I always get her back. But when she's with me, I always end up texting other girls. That's still a trauma response. There's a part of you that's craving distance, but intimacy at the same time. So we look at it and we try and relabel the behavior, because the avoidant will think, I don't care. And the anxious will think, I'm obsessed and I care too much. Both of them are defense mechanisms.
That dynamic of the guy with the girl, when he gets the girl, it's too suffocating. And when he's away from the girl, he's wistful and wishes that he could get her back, is a dynamic that I have seen so many times. Why is that so common? What is it that's going on inside of the male brain that's causing that?
Well, it would be. A lot of men think it's just the chase. They like the chase. And once they've got conquered, they no longer like the girl. There's an element of that, and that does happen. But majority of the time, it's when the man had emotionally distant parents, when the parents didn't take the time to truly get to know them and be truly there for them in terms of their emotional needs. What happens is they assume nobody's going to be there for their emotional needs. And the best way the ego defends itself is saying, I don't need anybody to be there for my emotional needs. I don't need to talk about my feelings. I don't need to connect. I don't need someone in my space all the time. So they replace what they didn't get with what they don't want. And so when they meet somebody who's trying to emotionally connect with them, they label it as, I don't need this, go away, leave me alone. And they'll distance themselves, distance. But when she leaves, they're in pieces. So they obviously do need it. They just don't know how to navigate this need alongside their trauma. So they end up pushing away the very people that they love and are trying to love them. And they attract clingy partners. What happens is the avoidant person always attracts the clingy, because if a distant independent person met another distant independent woman, they don't have the glue to keep them together. So they also don't feel validated by somebody who doesn't care to see them. But when they meet that clingy partner, they get the validation that I'm loved, but then they don't have to put in the work because they know she'll love you and cling on to you regardless. So the clingy and the distant are always together.
One of the other common archetypes I think that I'm seeing at the moment are people who continue to crave validation even once they're in a relationship. This is facilitated by social media, obviously, the fact that you can get let's say that you have an argument with your partner and then you decide to post a thirst trap photo, or you decide to start following a bunch of different girls. Is it cheating? Well, we don't really have any rules around relationships to say, if you went out and had sex with somebody, that's definitely cheating. But this is more kind of passive aggressive, global. I'm just going to do it. I've got an excuse. If they do bring it up, it's because of their insecurity. They almost deserve it because we just had this argument. And it's kind of, there's a lot more degrees of freedom between in a relationship and out of a relationship, and everyone can fuck about in the middle section there. What is it, or why do certain people crave this chaos within relationships and this sort of validation outside of them?
Because they've lost touch with themselves. And what I mean by this is, if I've had a fight with my partner and my instinct is to go message another man, am I doing it because I like this other man and I want to speak to this other man? Or am I just trying to even out the playing field of this fight? Am I just trying to even out the score? Now, when you're so in touch with yourself and you love yourself and you go, what happens when you love and trust yourself is you go by what you truly desire. You're not trying to win a game. What you truly desire. You don't post a picture online to get comments because you're not in the mood. You've just had a fight with your partner. But when you're playing a game, it's game on. Every time you've annoyed me, game on. So when I speak to people and clients especially, they'll say, oh, he's just been liking another girl. He hasn't called me in a couple of days. I'm going to go see my ex. I'm like, but just stop. Do you want to see your ex, or are you doing this because you're upset he hasn't called you? Because if you want to see your ex, go ahead and do it. But if you're doing it because he hasn't called you, you are not connected to yourself. You don't respect or love yourself. You don't know yourself. You are going by what he's making you feel. But take back the control. Go by what you want to do. And if you want to see that ex, because you would do that even if this partner didn't annoy you, then listen to yourself. But if it's purely to even out the score, I promise you're going to leave with shame and guilt. And shame and guilt are the two worst emotions a human being can feel, because you direct that anger at yourself, and it chips away at our self-respect. So that's why I think people turn to alternatives. They've lost touch with their authenticity.